The desert night was cold enough to make even the wind sound dead. Rango was crossing a narrow canyon road when he heard it for the first time. A whistle. Low, sharp, human-like. But there were no humans in this world. And no animals alive enough to whistle like that out there. It came from somewhere above the rocks. Rango stopped in the moonlight and looked up. At the top of the canyon wall stood an old mine entrance, cut into the Blackstone like a mouth. A broken wooden sign leaned beside it. Blackstone mine closed after the collapse. The whistle came again. This time it sounded closer. And then Rango noticed something worse. There were footprints in the dust leading into the mine. Fresh footprints, but no tracks coming back out. Rango climbed up the rocky path and reached the mine entrance. Outside it, he found an old camp. A fire pit full of cold ash. A rusted lantern hanging from a post. A torn blanket. 3 metal cups. Someone had stayed there recently. But the creepiest thing was the food. 3 bowls of seeds and dried bugs sat on a crate beside the fire pit. 1 bowl was half-eaten. The food was still fresh. The night insects had not even touched it. Rango looked around. No voices. No movement. No owners. Then the whistle came again. This time from inside the tunnel. It did not sound like a call anymore. It sounded like an invitation. Inside the mine, the air changed. Outside, the desert had been dry and cold. Inside, the tunnel felt wet. Drops of water fell from the ceiling into the dust. But when Rango looked down, the drops were black. The tunnel walls were covered in old pickaxe marks and warning symbols painted in red. Some had faded. Some looked newer. At first, the tunnel was silent. Then Rango began hearing footsteps behind him. Not loud, not fast, just soft little steps in the dirt. Every time he stopped, they stopped. Every time he turned around, nothing was there. Then he passed an old miner cart and saw his own reflection in a broken mirror tied to the wall. But the reflection blinked half a second too late. The deeper Rango went, the more signs he found that others had entered before him. A fox's hat, a lizard's digging tool, a snake's lantern, a bundle of feathers tied with thread. All of them dropped in the same part of the tunnel, as if their owners had simply stopped needing them at the exact same place. Then the tunnel opened into a wide underground chamber. There were dozens of old wooden supports holding up the ceiling, and tied to every support was a little bell. Small mining bells. None of them were moving, but Rango could hear one of them ringing, somewhere deeper in the dark. Then Rango heard a voice. It came from the dark tunnel ahead. Soft, familiar, friendly. Spoke his name, not like a monster, not like a ghost, like an old friend calling him into another room. Rango froze. The voice came again, warmer this time, almost playful. Then another voice joined it. Then another. Then many. All of them saying the same thing. Rango, come here. The tunnel ahead was still empty. But on the walls beside him, shadows began moving in the shape of animals that were not there. A fox shadow, an owl shadow, a snake shadow, and then, finally, a shadow shaped exactly like Rango. Rango followed the ringing bell into the oldest part of the mine. There he found the collapsed or pit. The ground had fallen away long ago, leaving a deep circular hole in the rock. Old tracks led straight to its edge and stopped. Around the hole, the bells hung from broken ropes. And at the bottom of the pit, something moved. At first it looked like a pile of old miner coats and dust. Then it unfolded. It was tall, far too tall. Its body looked stitched together from shadow, broken tools, dry feathers, shed snake skin, and old mine cloth. It had no real face, only a smooth dark head with a smiling crack where a mouth should be. And from inside that crack came the whistle. The creature had not been calling for help. It had been learning voices. Then the truth became clear. The bells were not warnings. They were feeding it. Every time an animal entered the mine, the creature copied a whistle, then a voice, then a shape. It drew them deeper, one tunnel at a time, until they stood over the pit. Then it took something from them. Not just life, not just body. It took familiarity. That was why the voices sounded warm. That was why the shadows looked known. That was why the mine felt full of almost recognizable things. This creature hunted by becoming almost safe. And now it was learning Rango too. Across the chamber wall, in the thin shifting shadows, Rango watched his own shape begin moving without him. This was the part where smart animals ran. Rango was brave enough to stay and foolish enough to improvise. He looked at the bells, then at the support beams, then at the old mine cart track hanging above the pit. And suddenly he had a terrible idea. Rango grabbed a loose lantern, climbed onto the cart track, and began kicking every bell he could reach. The chamber exploded with sound. Bells rang together in a wild metal scream. The creature below twisted and writhed, trying to imitate all the noises at once. The smooth face cracked wider. Voices poured out of it. Fox voices, owl voices, snake voices, broken whistles, half-laughs, old pleas, and then Rango's voice too. But it could not control them. For the first time, the thing was confused. And confusion was all Rango needed. Rango threw the lantern into the oldest support beam. Flame raced up the dry wood. The chamber shook. One beam snapped, then another. Then the ceiling began to come down. The creature tried to climb out of the pit, but the ringing bells kept tangling around its body. Old ropes wrapped its limbs. Burning beams crashed across its back. Black dust burst from its mouth in long screaming clouds. Rango jumped from the track to the tunnel edge and ran as the whole chamber collapsed behind him. The mine did not roar. It screamed. All the copied voices came out at once, filling every tunnel as the mountain swallowed them. Rango burst out of Blackstone mine just as the entrance collapsed behind him. Dust filled the canyon. The whistle stopped. The night went quiet again. For a long moment, Rango stood there breathing hard, staring at the pile of fallen black stone where the mine entrance had been. Then he heard a tiny sound beside his foot. One of the little mining bells had rolled out of the dust and landed in the road. Rango bent down slowly and looked at it. It was cracked. Good. He gave it one cautious poke with his toe. Nothing happened. Rango smiled, the tired smile of someone who had just survived an extremely bad idea. He turned, started walking down the canyon road, and the moonlight followed him out. But behind him, half buried in the dust, the cracked bell moved once by itself. Not enough to ring, just enough to let the night know it was still there. And somewhere under the fallen rock, very deep, something tried to whistle again.